We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
The Dialogue, the community voice of Southern California's young professional network. Relevant discussions about the thoughts, concerns, opportunities, and challenges faced by today's generational leaders. Real talk, real people. This is The Dialogue. The Dialogue with Starlett Quarles on LA Talk Live and streaming live at www.latalklive.com.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? I am back, Starlett Quarles, your host of The Dialogue. Real talk, real people. I missed you guys so much. I have been off the air for 3 months. I was on a 3-month vacation, but I absolutely missed you guys. There's so much going on that we're going to catch up on tonight's show. But we are back live, and I want to personally thank all my guests. I missed you, Richard. I missed you so much. Richard got a new mohawk, y'all. You can't see it. But I want to thank my guest co-hosts who filled in for me. You guys did an absolutely fantastic job. Deanna Dupree, Terry Boykins, Candy Lewis, thank you so much for filling in for me while I was on my extended vacation. But I am back now and ready to talk about politics. So again, welcome to the Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. I am your host, Starlett Quarles, and we are on live at latalklive.com. And as always, the Dialogue is the voice of our generation. So thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's conversation, where we like to discuss topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about politics tonight. We're launching a brand new series called Let's Talk Politics. There is so much going on in the world today, and I would be absolutely remiss if I did not come back and talk about the current political climate and the racial tensions that are happening in America today. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be tackling the conversation of politics. Tonight, we're going to talk about Hillary and Trump, with our conversation on the presidential election. We're going to follow this up talking about civic engagement and what it really means for our vote to count, and how do we inspire the next generation to get more involved in politics, and not just the national conversation, but local, where it impacts us the absolute most. And we're going to conclude this series hearing from the next generation of civically engaged young professionals right here on the Dialogue. But as I mentioned tonight, we are launching this absolutely fantastic series and engaging and transparent conversation on the presidential election. So whether you're going for Hillary or Trump, or if you were a Bernie supporter, we have guests here tonight that represent all three of those perspectives, starting with my absolutely beautiful co-host for this series, which is going to be Miss Kenya Parham, who is a political strategist. And we're going to introduce you to Miss Kenya when we come back from our first commercial break. She's going to be joined tonight by political activist and Bernie supporter William Sims. And calling in is California delegate for Donald Trump, Miss Shirley Hussar, all here tonight to help me launch my series on Let's Talk Politics and our conversation for tonight on the presidential election. And as always, each week, like with every show, this is a community conversation. So we definitely want to hear from you. So give us a call here in studio at 323-473-3100, 323-473-3100. You can also post your comments or your questions on our Facebook page at facebook.com/thedialoguela, or tweet me at StarQuar if you have some comments or questions for tonight's conversation. But we definitely want to hear from you. So we do want you to give us a call here in studio, 323-473-3100. Our website is in the process of getting updated, but you can still go to it and sign up for our mailing list. If you've missed any of our past conversations, or you want to get email notifications about what shows we have coming up on The Dialogue, please visit our website at thedialoguela.com. Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to jump right into our conversation on Hillary versus Trump and the presidential election. I know you have an opinion about it. Give us a call here, 323-473-3100. We're going to take a quick commercial break so we can talk about what's going on. What is going on? Like Marvin Gaye said, what is going on? We'll be right back.
Bring some understanding here today. Pick it loud and pick it sound. Don't punish me for brutality. Come on, talk to me. You can see what's going on. Yeah, what's going on? Tell me what's
SoCal NOMA, the Southern California chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects, is hosting its 7th annual 3-day summer camp on 3 successive Saturdays, July 9th, July 16th, and July 23rd, for ages 10 through 15, with a reception and award ceremony on July 30th at Southern California Institute of Architecture. Campers will enjoy a 1-day field trip created to engage new ideas for famous and important local community projects. Day 2 of the camp will be hands-on exploration of the campers' innate qualities as it relates to building design experience. And Day 3 will include learning how to use a 3-dimensional computer software program to create the built environment. To learn more and to register, go to SoCalNOMA.org, that's SoCalNOMA.org, and click on the Camp NOMA page. Be sure to register today at SoCalNOMA.org. SoCal NOMA, proud sponsors of LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Hey, shout outs out. What's the count? I'm Ferran Dozier.
And I'm your boy, Cali Sportsman, inviting you to join us
Every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific on the Sports Lounge Live.
Explore the world of sports, from amateur to the pros, the community on a global level, relevant sports news, and guess what? We even have live studio guests.
So don't forget to tune into the Sports Lounge Live every Saturday, 2 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LATalkLive.com and the America Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. This is LA Talk Live.
And we are more than just talk. Hey, shout us out. What's the count? I'm your host. I am WDC. Tune in to WDC Radio on LA Talk Live every Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for sickle cell trait awareness, lupus, bullying, mental health, and all different aspects of life. So tune in to WDC Radio right here on LA Talk Live. Also, you can listen to us on iTunes, Live 365, YouTube, and Ustream. And don't forget Apple TV and Roku right here on LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk. Shout us out. What's the count?
Hi, this is Frank. And this is Ruslan. Inviting you to join us every Thursday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for Cool Classics. Join us as we discuss classical cool in the arts, what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen. So don't forget to tune in to Cool Classics every Thursday, 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Radio Flag, TuneIn Radio, Aha Radio, TiVo Radio, and Apple TV Radio. Or just watch and listen directly at Cool Classics on LATalkLive.com. Classic radio handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and this is Frank, and this is Ruslan, and we are more than just talk.
Before you put on this record, understand, this is for all of my ancestors who were raped, who were killed, and hung because of their plight for freedom and for dignity. They died for me, and they died for you. This is for them to know that, yes, even today, in 1992, we are still fired up, and we're still talking about
a revolution. A revolution. Welcome back to the dialogue. Real talk, real people. I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, and we are launching a brand new series tonight. Let's talk politics. And tonight's conversation is on the presidential election, Hillary versus Trump. I know you have an opinion about it, so we definitely want to hear from you today. 323-473-3100. 323-473-3100, or you can post your comments or your questions on our Facebook page or tweet me at Starquar. So I want to hear up and jump into this conversation. So let me first introduce my absolutely beautiful co-host for this series, Miss Kenya T. Parham. How you doing, sweetie?
I am so great, Starlett.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for, coming on the show. Help me have this very salient conversation that we need to have specifically in the Black community.
I'm really excited about it, and I'm really thankful to be here with you through the whole month.
Fantastic. We're going to have a good time.
We are.
But let me first introduce you to Miss Kenya, who is a political strategist, fundraising specialist, and thought leader. She has been recognized by the Huffington Post as an emerging millennial leader to watch. She is the principal of KPN Associates, which epitomizes the modern-day Renaissance woman. She epitomizes the modern-day Renaissance woman. She delivers a fierce combination of political strategy, public affairs, and fundraising expertise, complemented by a unique perspective that sets her apart as one of the few African-American women dominating the consultancy and commentary landscape. Ms. Parham, Ms. Kenya, is also the featured political pundit heard monthly on NPR's KECP Enterprising People show, and is the creator of Parlay, an urban think tank on civic engagement, which is a series of curated conversations that bring together dynamic influencers across industries. From her roots as a student organizer, she has dedicated her life's work to empowering underserved and underrepresented communities nationwide through donor activism and civic engagement. Acknowledged as an emerging leader ambassador of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, along with her complimented tenure as the national vice chair of the Black Caucus of Young Democrats of America and membership in the American Association of Political Consultants, Kenya prominently shares her passion and perspective through a number of social political channels and has proudly served on several local, statewide, and national boards. So let me officially introduce you to my co-host, Miss Kenya T. Parham. And that's just a snippet of her bio. I mean, I couldn't really even go into all of the details. This woman has done absolutely so much as a progressive millennial, and I'm so excited to have her on this show and to kind of share the voice of the progressive millennial. So again, welcome, Miss Kenya T. Parham. Sitting next to Kenya is William Sims, who is a political and community organizer from Altadena, California. He began his career as a 16-year-old vice president of the Pasadena City College chapter of the NAACP, where he worked to educate young people about leveraging their economic power while pursuing education. That is absolutely fantastic. I know your parents are proud.
No, they just beat me.
What were you doing at 16?
They just beat us.
They beat you? They beat you all the way up to the polls?
They beat us to success.
I love it. William refined his organizing skills as a congressional field representative for Congressman Adam Schiff, where he managed federal issues in the areas of science, technology, and entertainment. Following his time with the city of Pasadena, he began organizing for Bernie Sanders and has recently taken a position at the Pasadena City College, where he coordinates supportive services for male students of color. So please welcome Mr. William Sims to the dialogue. Thank you, sir. I'm glad to have you on as our Bernie supporter voice. And I should say that Kenya is a supporter of Hillary Clinton, and I would be remiss if I didn't have the voice of Mr. Donald Trump in on this conversation. And representing that voice is Miss Shirley Huzar, who is on the line. Hi, Shirley.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing today?
How you doing, sweetie?
I'm doing well.
Fantastic. Let me introduce you, and then we'll get into a little bit of conversation here. Shirley is currently
real quick before you introduce me, I just want to clarify. I know there was a flyer out saying that I'm representing Donald Trump, and as a delegate, I'm not. I'm representing Urban Game Changer, and I'm going to be talking from the perspective of my perspective and not the delegacy of Donald Trump.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
So you're not the only African American female chosen to be a delegate?
I am, but I can't talk from the perspective of a delegate. I can talk from the perspective of Urban Game Changers and myself, and I am a Republican, and I do support Mr. Trump.
Okay,
Totally.
so I can say you don't have to speak from that perspective, but you are a delegate for the Republican candidate. Yes.
That is correct,
Okay.
but I do not speak for the delegates.
Okay,
for
all right.
Mr. Trump's campaign.
Okay, fantastic. And we heard you, and the audience heard you. So she's speaking from the Urban Game Changers perspective, as well as a female black Republican. She was recently the co-host for the Black Tea Party for Black Hollywood Live, and she is in essence a political activist and the talk show host of her own show, Urban Game Changers, which is dedicated to raising the voices of everyday people, neighborhood by neighborhood, so that children have stronger communities and expanded opportunities to learn how to start a small business and improve their lives by creating less governmental influence and increase the accountability of programs that are already in place. The process can help to hold elected officials accountable and for the communities that they represent. So please welcome Ms. Shirley Hussar, talk show host and political activist for Urban Game Changer, who just also happens to be a California delegate. So, and Shirley, I'm going to get to you quickly, but I want to start with Kenya. Why did you think this conversation? Because we saw each other at Juneteenth,
Yes,
and we were just like, we need to do a show together. And we, of course, it was in your natural wheelhouse to do something around politics. But why did you think this conversation is so important, especially for today's, young Black millennials?
Well, I think everything starts with dialogue.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that we spend enough time talking amongst each other. I think that we are constantly being talked about.
Okay.
And I think that, using platforms like yours and being able to engage with folks across platforms, social media, you have a live stream, we're on radio, I think is a fantastic combination of being able to disseminate opinions and elevate discourse.
And we see how social media has just impacted this conversation.
Absolutely.
Around police brutality.
Yes.
And the plight of Black men. So I want to ask you, and of course there have been so many shootings over the past couple of years, but in reference to the recent shootings of Sterling and Castile, what are your thoughts on the current racial tensions here in America?
And you mentioned social media. I think one of the fascinating things and really wonderful things about social media is that specifically for people of color who use it as a tool, it allows us to advance and forward our narratives, to capture and document our stories in a unique way that is cannot be taken away. That is saliently ours, and that has not been done before.
Yeah.
I mean, in a time when you have history books being rewritten to say that, Black folks who were slaves were indentured servants, I think it's absolutely imperative that we can capture and tell our own stories. And so, I think about the murders of Castile and Sterling. I think the same thing that I thought about Trayvon, that I thought about Sean Bell, that I thought about Amadou, that I thought about Oscar. It is a constant exercise to not be desensitized by these things, to not feel like this is normal. So I force myself to feel. Right. I don't always have an answer.
Okay. Right. William, what about you? What are your thoughts on this racial tension? And Shirley, I'm going to get to you in a second. But in terms of just the overall, feeling and conversation around this, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's a wake-up call.
For who?
For our generation.
Okay.
I mean,
and what is that? What are you waking up to? What do you realize? What's your epiphany?
The reality, and not just I think across the spectrum of millennials. With younger people in our generation, they grew up in this post-racial society, and they were told everything was fine and that we all lived together in harmony, and then all of a sudden they're seeing racism firsthand. They're seeing that it's not post-racial, that you people still view you as a threat. If you're an African American man, people are afraid of you. If you're an African American woman,
and we're seeing that now.
Specifically, I mean, you go as far back, going far back in time, but even as recently as the young woman who was thrown to the ground at the pool party.
Right.
Why is a 110-pound young lady being, why is a 80-pound man sitting on a 110-pound
Absolutely.
13-year-old.
Absolutely.
I mean, we see that. I think this is the wake-up call, showing people that it isn't as safe and peachy as they thought.
And it's not only a wake-up call for black people, it's a wake-up call for white people too. And we're going to talk about what that dialogue looks like, because, no pun intended, but, everybody is talking about that.
Yes.
There needs to be a dialogue. There needs to be a dialogue. But what does that dialogue look like, right? How transparent do we want to be? Shirley, let me get your opinion and your thoughts on the racial tensions here in America today.
Now, the racial tension in America today is higher than I thought I would ever see. Not only just the racial tension and the despair of the homeless people downtown Los Angeles, the veterans, the displacement of jobs, and how there is a culture that is having more of a majority than being part of the minority that we're in. We've been taking those rights away. For every action, there is a reaction. For every non-action is an aftermath. And I think that we're all tired of the aftermath.
Okay.
And
now, Shirley,
we know the protocol of how this works.
Okay. Now, I'm going to get you just you have 2 black sons. And so what is the...
I have 3.
Okay,
sons.
so you have 3 black sons. And
Yes.
so a lot of what, some of these, pundits and these white commentators are talking about is the talk, right? About having these talk. Now we have to have this talk with our young black girls, right? So what is the talk? What is the talk that you now need to have, or if you have not had, with your black sons, and especially coming from a Republican perspective?
Right. This talk was talks from conception. This is not something like all of a sudden I need to sit down and talk to my sons. When you come from a culture of people who are not immigrants or illegal immigrants, we are chattel slaves. We were slaves that were brought here on ships, and we were put here for cattle and for slave work. So that was the first conversation I had with my sons, to identify that you are birthed into a country that looks at you in a different manner. And so it prepared them as they propelled and became grown men as they are today, to deal with the fact that they know that they have to speak, act, and perform a little different than maybe the norm.
Okay, all right, Kenya, you want to say something?
Yeah. Respectfully, I think that it hasn't stopped.
Okay.
And I think that, with the ability for us to self-document, as I was saying in my previous point, we are now just able to tell these stories, share this information in real time.
Yeah, I must say in real time.
In real time.
And we're seeing people get killed in real time.
Live.
Absolutely.
That this is happening to me.
Right.
This happened 10 hours ago, and in 24 hours, the whole world has heard it. And
Right.
so, I don't think that these are things that have started. It's not a resurgence. This has continued to happen.
Right.
And there have been many veils that have been used to disguise it.
I mean, if any of you, and I watched it intensely, anything having to do with the OJ trial and this last documentary, if you guys saw that trial, they really go into depth.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? About the mentality of the police department, the racial tensions that were already happening around 1990. I was here when it was burning. When LA was burning. I just graduated from UCLA, so it's very raw and very real for me. But there's a generation that's just now kind of seeing that post Rodney King, it's still going on, right?
Well, and we had only a few perspectives back then, right?
Absolutely.
It was what was being told to you. That narrative was pretty narrow.
Okay.
And so that's what I think is really exciting about, being able to self-document or self-produce your own radio show, or, things like that, is that,
absolutely,
we're able to offer some differences in opinions. And
so one of the things that I'm constantly talking about on here is to be able to vote in your self-interest, right? And for us to be able to have an agenda. Now, what seems to be the black agenda is Black Lives Matter, right? Or that's the perception that's going to be the black agenda. So I'm going to start with you, William. Just tell your thoughts on the Black Lives Matter movement, and does it resonate with you?
I think the Black Lives Matter movement is amazing. I think it's giving voice to unheard population, an unheard group of African American people who are oftentimes silenced in our own community.
And that unheard group is?
I think it's an opportunity for the LGBT community to speak out.
Okay.
A lot of the leaders in Black Lives Matter are members of the LGBTQI community, and oftentimes in the black community we don't we don't protect our LGBTQI brothers and sisters. We don't
allow
them that space.
But is that just a known fact? Because it's not being branded as an LGBTQ movement. It's being branded as
I don't think
black police brutality.
I don't think it's specifically an LGBTQI movement, but I think that it gives space to people in that community who have not been allowed to lead other parts of this work.
Okay.
It's giving them the space to lead this work. It is about, I think, the protecting African American life, black life around America. Okay. But also I think it gives space, specifically to women also.
Okay.
With Say Her Name.
Shirley, let me get your thoughts. What are your thoughts on the Black Lives Matter movement, and does it resonate with you?
I think there's no doubt that Black Lives Matter definitely resonates with me and many African Americans across the country. I think the concern, though, as it has evolved, there is no real true head to the factor of it. So it becomes this wild beast that you don't know what they might do. Dr. King did march, and he did march peacefully, but he didn't disrupt the revenue stream that flows within the city in the sense of the way they did today, and put themselves in harm's way like they did by marching on the freeway. Dr. King did do the things as far as disruptive other things like the bus station, sit on the bus and things of that nature. But I think the key thing with the Black Lives Matter is I'm concerned about how it is evolving. Where is it going? What is their main goal in this? Because they really have not prepared any proposal to say, hey, this is what we want that is going to be effective as far as the legislation. Okay. I don't think
I'm going to get you. And one of the things that, at least for me, when you talk about Martin Luther King and the Montgomery bus boycott movement, that wasn't necessarily a political movement as much as it was a socioeconomic one, because the goal was to be able to impact white America economically, and
which is very political.
I wouldn't say it was spiritual. I meant to say it's religious. I'm sorry. I meant to say it's religious.
Like sort of walking on the freeway,
and not just civil rights.
When you walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, when you walk,
and Shirley, let me just offer. Thank you, William.
I keep hearing people say Dr. King wouldn't walk across the freeway. He walked across.
freeways. Yeah,
he did.
And he also put himself in harm's way. He stood in front of water hoses. He stood, there were dogs on the front line, people being ripped by their collars down into the street. I'd like to offer that is awfully dangerous.
Okay, Shirley?
I just don't understand what the ultimate goal of Black Lives Matter is trying to accomplish. I know what all of us at. I know that we all know we need some type of solution, and that's why we're here having this dialogue today.
Okay. Absolutely. Let me offer this. One of the beautiful things about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm glad that it resonates with folks across the aisle, is because it's intended to be quite affirming and in defense movement of Black life, as William said.
Right.
They do have a website where their manifesto is plastered everywhere. They're quite active on social media. Their manifesto is also shared there. So if you have any questions about the intentions or the objectives of the movement, I would encourage you, to look it up on the web.
Okay.
As it pertains
but let me
to,
say, manifesto does not pertain to having legislation on the table.
Understood.
And have a conversation. Hillary Clinton told them that right in their face.
And I appreciate your point. To a larger degree, I think that a little bit too much pressure is being placed on this insurgents of this movement to carry the flag, if you will, for all things Black and legislative. And I think that we need to take a step back and realize that things are changing. Leadership looks different in 2016 than it did back in the day. And I think that a lot of us are empowered seeds now with quite an array of tools at our disposal to lead. One of the beautiful things that I've seen about the movement, I'm not sure if you would agree with this too, is that people are utilizing the things that they have at their disposal to be leaders. Someone with 200 followers tweets something that resonates with, Black Twitter or Black Lives Matter. They amplify that regardless of who that person is. And I think that person in that moment is a leader of an idea and forwarding some kind of substance that can be at the base of something policy-oriented.
And that's why I asked, about having a Black agenda, because you said Black Lives Matter doesn't necessarily resonate across the board when it
No,
comes
I'm saying
to...
it does. I'm saying it should.
You said it should?
It should. It's in defense of Black life.
Okay.
You know, this is not Black Democrats. This is not Black Republicans. This is not Black independents. This is.
Would you say it equates to the civil rights movement and the civil rights? It was an agenda that impacted all socioeconomic strata of Black people, and it wasn't just. I mean, he kind of
I think it's a progressive movement for sure.
All right.
I wouldn't say that it's a conservative movement.
Okay. All right.
I think that it is. It is out there. It is in your face, but it is also aerial and it is also subversive, and so.
Okay.
And I think
but there are other agendas that impact the Black community other than police brutality.
Absolutely.
And that's why I use civil rights as an umbrella in terms of an agenda that everybody can get behind.
But I think the thing is, we keep trying to make one group responsible for all Black people.
Right.
And I don't think that Black Lives Matter even strives.
And like you guys said, it represents a more millennial, young. I'm not saying that there aren't other people that aren't involved, but it also you talk about the LGBTQ affiliation.
Well, I think
and of course, killing Black men, it resonates in all Black communities across the country. But I know that there are some baby boomers and some empty nesters that aren't necessarily out there marching because of the Black Lives Matter, agenda.
But I think that goes to helping people understand that you don't have to agree with every portion of this to support it.
Okay.
I mean, if we're saying
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And I think it goes to the broader issue that we're not asking for you to agree with every idea, or they're not asking us to agree with every idea that they have, but they're saying we all need to stand up.
But it is the platform and the conversation that these presidential candidates are leaning to when you talk about Black people. They're talking about racial tensions. Right, and so they're narrowing down the issues of the Black community just to talking about racial tensions. When I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but it is the platform that they're leveraging.
I mean, education, jobs.
Absolutely.
There's several other issues.
Gentrification, issues. But they're not talking necessarily about that. But what they're leaning on is, I'm just putting out facts. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that the conversations recently, which are justified, are around racial tension, but it's being built. But that's the only thing that the candidates are talking about. But we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk specifically about the perspectives of all three presidential candidates, or two, with Bernie, and who do you guys believe is the best candidate for Black people? We're talking about politics tonight and the presidential election with my co-host, Miss Kenya Parham, William Sims, and Shirley Hussar. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
She's shaking, looking like she took it the hardest. A spin artist, she brought her face up laughing. That's when the prosecutor realized what happened. All that speaking of mind, testifying and crying. When this bitch did the crime, the queen pin.
Hey, shout us out. What's the count? I'm your host. I am WDC. Tune in to WDC Radio on LA Talk Live every Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for sickle cell trait awareness, lupus, bullying, mental health, and all different aspects of life. So tune in to WDC Radio right here on LA Talk Live. Also, you can listen to us on iTunes, Live 365, YouTube, and Ustream. And don't forget Apple TV and Roku right here on LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk. Shout us out. What's the count?
Interested in advertising your business, product, or service here on The Dialogue? The Dialogue will help you promote your business, increase your traffic, and bring in new clients through innovative and creative marketing packages, including affordable radio ad campaigns for small businesses. Go to www.thedialoguela.com or call 323-475-8729. That's 323-475-8729. 323-475-8729. And now, back to The Dialogue. The Dialogue with Starlett Quarles. Real talk, real people.
Refugee camp, conspiracy theory, why?
Conspiracy theory. Welcome back to the Dialogue. Real talk, real people. I am your host, Starlett Quarles, and we are talking about the presidential election tonight for our series, Let's Talk politics. So we want to hear from you. Give us a call here, 323-473-3100, 323-473-3100, or post your comments or your questions on our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Dialogue LA, or tweet me at Starlett Quarles. Now, before we were going to commercial break, we were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. Let me just say, I'm not opposed to Black Lives Matter movement or none of that. My thing is having a black agenda and people voting in terms of their self-interest. And I've been saying that since I've started the show about having a black agenda, and to the extent that the Black Lives Matter movement is on the tongues of both these candidates, I want us to be able to be clear in from that perspective. And if you are, not that you are opposed to what Black Lives Matter movement is doing, but if you are in support, if you're not in support, have an agenda when you go to these polls. Vote in your self-interest. So Kenya, before we went to break, at the commercial break, we had talked about you being a Hillary supporter, and this is your first time coming out
publicly.
So publicly, this is your first time saying that
I will be voting for Hillary Clinton.
So what is it about Hillary Clinton that you like, ma'am?
You good?
Speak your truth. Speak truth to power.
Yeah, but say that. Say
that. Don't you love when your friends just out you?
You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? You invited him.
Okay, I did. We're gonna talk about it later. Why am I supporting her?
Yeah.
Firstly, as a woman, I am concerned about the type of leadership that we have in the executive office.
Okay.
I know what happens when women lead across the board.
Okay.
I have seen it. I have lived it. I was trained by powerful women.
So what happens when women lead?
They build consensus,
okay,
for one. We increase dialogue. And I think that we attack and address issues with a much more humane and inclusive approach.
Okay.
I think there's something, whether you are a mother or not, there's something innately nurturing about women.
Okay.
And when you put women in leadership positions, that is what happens. Secondly, I think that she is by far the most qualified presidential candidate we have ever had.
Okay.
Do I agree with her on everything? No.
Okay.
But
do you think she was more qualified than Obama?
Yeah.
Okay. You think she should have beat Obama?
At the time, no.
Okay.
I think President Obama was the exact leader that we needed at the exactly right time, which is why I was proud to support him then. And if he was running for a third term, I would support him again.
Absolutely.
But I'm proud to support her.
Okay.
So
do you think America is really ready for a female president?
I do.
You do?
I do. I think it's going to take a lot of courage.
Okay. On whose part?
On our part.
Okay.
On our part. It's going to take a lot of courage to have this conversation.
Okay.
There's still a lot of disparities and things that show me that, we are still coming over that hump. Quite frankly, I was in disbelief, although I wanted it really badly when we elected our first black president. I could have sat here and said the same thing to you, that I don't know if we're ready for this.
Right.
But I think it's going to take a lot of courage, and I think we are at that precipice again.
Now, when we were talking about the millennials, you kind of distinguish between the older millennials and kind of the younger ones. So you said you were an older millennial. But being an older millennial, how did you become so civically engaged? Were your parents? Did they drag you to the polls?
I got 1,001 arms and hands beneath me, lifting me up, that got me to this place.
Nice.
And I was trained for this. People sacrificed for me to be here. So when I open my mouth and speak, when I do the work in the communities, it is less about Kenya and more about a reflection of all of those people who have poured into me. I'm like a stained glass window. I got, pieces of everybody I carry with me.
So do your current political views mirror that of your parents?
I think they are an extension of, I think in many ways I'm a little bit more progressive, while my parents are absolutely, civil rights leaders of their time, particularly in the educational space. But I think I'm a little bit more progressive and a little bit more daring, and I think as they were too.
So what does it mean to be a political strategist?
Politics is life.
Okay.
Politics is everywhere, from what you decide to wear and present yourself when you walk out the door to how you self-identify with your race and ethnicity. everything is politics. And so being a strategist means that I look at the world through a particular lens and am able to identify political scenarios and strategize how to best navigate my way or my client's way.
So are you like an
through that.
Olivia Pope?
You know, it's KP and Associates, not Olivia Pope and Associates. So. No, you know,
but in terms of our perception of what a political strategist looks like, many of us reflect on that show.
I think that there are parts of her. I mean, I don't sleep with married presidents,
of course not.
But and the over sexualization of that black woman in that role is something.
But do you deal with people's bad PR, or do you?
Yeah, I do. Okay. I do reputation repair. I do campaign management. I raise a whole bunch of money. I fix problems, and I also am able to kind of create openings and spaces and allow for representation where there currently is.
So how does one become that? I mean, how did you know how to do that? Is it something that innate? Were you taught?
You sound like my parents when I told them this is what I was going to do. Both my parents are educators, and they looked at me and
So what does that look like?
They were like, I don't really know how you think you're going to do this. The answer is that I kind of carved out a niche for myself and kept my head down, had blinders on, and did the work. This gentleman right here has had the privilege of knowing me for years and has seen me build this. And it's not something that is just for myself. It is kind of a collective. And so it started off as one campaign, running one campaign, you get one win. And starting off literally in field work. It's a horrible
but you had that desire. I mean, did you major in poli-sci?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did.
All right.
I did political science. I've always been a volunteer on campaigns. I was on the corner outside of South Coast Plaza Mall with my mom at like 12 years old, holding signs, asking people to honk. My mom.
So you're born to do this.
I was born to do this.
You were born to do this.
This is what I do.
William, you were a Bernie supporter.
Yes.
And you are now endorsing.
I'm with her.
You're endorsing Hillary. So tell us about Bernie. What was it about Bernie that you liked? And were you like heartbroken when he didn't make it?
I mean, I'm not naive enough to think that this was going to happen.
Okay.
I mean, I think this work in the primary was really about a labor of passion.
So when you went for Bernie, I mean, juxtapose that with, Hillary. Why didn't you automatically just go for Hillary? What was it about Bernie?
I felt I wanted to be a part of the group that said enough is enough of the same. And I knew, ultimately, I think I had accepted the fact that I would be with her in the fall.
Okay.
And then the general I would be voting for Hillary Clinton. But I think in the primary, I had an opportunity to stand up with someone who had stood with my community since before I was a part of that community. From someone who.
And your community, meaning the black community?
The black community.
Okay.
Someone who marched with Dr. King, someone who advocated for not just civil rights issues, but even in the platform when he discusses college. I think that's access to education is a big piece, specifically for young people of color. I think that is a pathway to success, and if we can provide access, free access to that, I think that's amazing. So to hear a candidate talk about those things and talk about things that would help us break the glass ceilings was amazing.
And be clear, I have nothing against Bernie Sanders. Okay. In fact, I love that man.
Okay.
But
if
you
had to choose, passion. You had to go between the two.
But here's the thing: I also know where I am, and I know where I live, and I know what this country looks like. And in working in politics, I understand that there are parts of America that need fixing, that need reform, and there are other parts that are going to stay relatively the same. There are agendas that exist outside of people who occupy these offices.
All right. And so you were raised with a picket sign in your hand too?
I grew up, I think, watching my parents be advocates, not just in the political space, but in the community sense. I grew up with a strong sense of responsibility to the community. I grew up in Pasadena, the last school district to integrate in the country. And so having seen the people who led that effort and been mentored by them, I had a responsibility to give back. That door was left and it's swinging open for me to go through the ladder. There was a rope that I could climb to make my climb easier. And so, just as Kenya stands on the shoulders of others, I am a product of so many hours given, so many dollars given, whether it was for me to go to a political camp or to sit in an internship. So it's my duty.
Absolutely. And do your views mirror that of your parents?
My parents are a lot more conservative than I am. I think that but also I think I have the ability to be more liberal because of my age. I don't have as much to risk, and I understand as I grow, the older I get, the more assets I attain, I get a little more conservative.
It's fantastic. Okay, Shirley, I hear you on the computer in the background. So when you're not talking, I'm gonna ask you to put your phone on mute. But I want you to talk. I want you to discuss your political evolution because you are unique in that you are a black female and you also are Republican. So what were you taught about? Were your parents Republican? I mean, talk about being a black Republican.
Well, it's interesting because I come from a different era than those people that are on your panel today. I come from an era where it was about civil rights. My parents were born, my father was born in 1920, my mother was born in 1928. They had a business called Tiny Town College on 39th in Vermont. It was a daycare center. It was a non-profit organization that would go into the urban communities, and we were able to bring children in at a very, very low discount and cater to them. They did that for 40 years. They both passed on since then. As far as politics, I've always found it very fascinating, all the way back to junior high. Like I said, I come from a different era.
Were your parents Republicans?
No, that was not an issue back then.
Okay.
My mother was a Republican. My father was a Democrat. The issue was civil rights. It wasn't so divided as it is now. It wasn't a clear line of we're this and you're that. It was about the community, and that's where we have gotten away from, where we're so focused on party lines and not focused on really that we all have the same goals and agenda to have a civil discussion and have a civil rights for all.
So how did you evolve to identify with the Republican Party and the Republican agenda?
With the issues that they represent, I'm curious.
No, I know what you're saying. I'm trying to get to that. I worked on Julia Dixon campaign. I worked with different Democrats when I was a little girl. As I became an adult and I went to church, there was a magazine it was during the time of the Reagan-Carter administration, and there was a magazine that got put out with the Christian Coalition, and our pastor said, African-American pastor said, you know what, I'm not going to tell you how to vote or who to vote for, but you can do your homework and study the agenda. And like these bright people that you have on your panel today, I was like that as well. I was eager and I wanted to get politically even more engaged from the age of 10 to the age to when I became a teenager. And I realized that the Ronald Reagan was more in alignment than I was. My parents owned their own business. They weren't government supported. They had nonprofits and they had helped other people that built nonprofits, but they also believed in capitalism, that you had to go out there and make it happen for yourself. There was no talk of distribution of wealth in the sense of allowing someone else to control your destiny.
But the crack dealer made you a Republican?
Reaganomics?
Okay, so our guests have some questions for you. What did you say now?
The crack dealer, the man who brought crack into our community.
You're talking about Ronald?
Yeah, the one who contributed and brought crack into LA's inner city. That's the person.
Again, I didn't interrupt you guys. I just wanted to say that's how I became.
Okay.
You asked me my personal how I became a Republican, and at that time, that was not on the forefront.
Okay.
He was not president at that time.
Okay, so what do you believe?
How he evolved is what you're talking about in the future. I understand that, and there's other things that the Clinton administration has done to devastate your own generation and generations previously.
Okay, and so what do you believe are some of the biggest misconceptions about black Republicans?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions about black Republicans is that we don't care about our own community. That's far at least the truth. The truth of the matter is that we have so much desire to see growth and opportunity. It's interesting when I talk to young millennials or I talk to anyone that's a Democrat when it comes to business. Everyone talks about small business.
Now, Shirley, I don't mean to cut you off. Are you on speakerphone? Because it's kind of hard to hear you.
Is this better?
Yes, that's much better. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you. So what were some of your misconceptions? What were some of the misperceptions that people feel about black Republicans?
I think some of the misconceptions that we don't care about the black community. Not only do we care, we have a format in our party that talks about capitalism and opportunity of growth from your own perspective. I love how I continue to talk to Democrats, and then many of them tell me, well, we have these nonprofits, or we need to have the government to intervene and take care of us because we cannot take care of ourselves. I've heard so many different perspectives, and I get, look, Black people are strong. We are forthright. We understand what we need to do to make changes in our own community. But what I love about the Republican Party is that this party talks about capitalism in the sense of small and big, and not just global, but just every aspect. I want to see us talk about policies of wealth in our own community on a global perspective and not just a small, minute, local perspective. And I believe the Republican Party definitely understands that. It understands that. And, we in an urban community, all I used to hear as a kid from the Democrat side is that we have to have subsidized programs. These are the ways that you do it. You get a small business loan and you continue to put yourself in debt. When I got involved with Republicans, when I understood what true capitalism was, and that capitalism is those small LLCs or the big LLCs, the S corporations, or we talk about OPM, other people's money, we talk about hedge funds. These are things that you don't hear in the dialect to see people have of little government. We believe in government, but it's just little of it, and more for the people, not controlled by government.
And in all honesty, when I talk to any of the other Black Republicans, that's usually their reason why they join the party is because it's for business purposes. They want the tax breaks, they're making a lot of money, and so they think from a very entrepreneurial perspective when it comes to joining the Republican Party. But Kenya, you want to say something?
I'm going to defer to Will.
Okay, Will.
I would say, and that I can't argue with your experience, but I want to say you are sitting and you're talking to two young people who own their own businesses. You're talking to two young people who are focused on building capital and replicating the model across the country and globally. I mean, I think in our generation, specifically the millennial generation, if there's one thing we understand is capitalism. If there's one thing that we are passionate about is building wealth, not just wealth for ourselves, but generationally, and not relying on others to give us a job, not relying on
I think that's great that you have that perspective, but your party does not promote that. Well, your party doesn't talk about capitalism.
Well, I think we have blue dog Democrats
who... Your party talks about constant government-expanded programs and things to be taken care of.
That's not the entire party.
I think that has been so devastating for the last 40 years in our urban communities, and obviously we see that because if you were to drive in Brentwood or if you were to drive in Glenwoodale or Pasadena compared to L.A., South L.A., you don't have that impact of what you're talking about, of what you're becoming. You have to look at what your previous counterparts have created for you to step into and take over.
Well, respectfully, Shirley, let me just give you a little bit of my experience. I was born and raised in South Orange County, California, where a Black population was less than 1%, in a family household with a medium income far over that of the 5%, top 5% of wealth earners in our nation. And so I was raised in a family and understood very, very clearly what it was like to be a Black child in that environment, and that despite my parents' socioeconomic status, despite their involvement in civic engagement in the communities that we lived in, when I walked outside the doors of my house, I was still a Black child. Mm-hmm. When I sat in the educational institutions, I was still a Black child.
Educational institution meaning predominantly white.
Predominantly white, okay. Absolutely. And I was a public school kid all the way through college. And so, I want to offer to this dialogue the notion of, a person like a Donald Trump, who is supposed to be perceived as anti-establishment, a projector of wealth. And I just want to offer, given what has happened in the last decade of America, that I don't think he is anti-establishment. I think he absolutely is the establishment. He's Wall Street. He's Wall Street personified. All right. He's an established brand, and he's directly connected to the financial institutions, particularly in New York, which is where a lot of our the base of finances are. So I just want to offer that because it's confusing to me when I hear supporters like Shirley talking about the reason why they are in support of somebody like a Trump.
So Shirley, let me ask you. So how do you separate the fact that the Black community perceives not only the Republican Party but Donald Trump as racist?
I don't see Mr. Trump as that. I think everyone has to look at each candidate and how they perceive it. I mean, I think about Miss Hillary Clinton and how the Honorable Louis Farrakhan made it very clear that he called her a very wicked, wicked woman. You can find that online. You can find all the YouTube videos that are talked about that. So, I mean, we hear what he says on his perspective of where she stands. There's also the new Jim Crow When we look at Michelle Alexander, who has this book called The New Jim Crow, and she makes it very clear about the Clintons and their perspective and their long-term agenda of how they had a perspective of incarcerating more and more black people. Not only did it, but Bill Clinton, under his administration, with the help of Hillary Clinton. Now, you guys don't know this because you're young, so I'm going to throw the card on the table.
Actually, we do.
When Hillary Clinton,
Very aware of
You're
it.
talking to some very educated and civically engaged
Can I
guests.
get my thoughts, please?
Okay.
We just want to help you state the facts.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. If we look at Clinton perspective and the Clinton administration, during the Bill Clinton administration, they had the largest massive incarceration of federal prison. That was his agenda and its history. He had the largest incarceration of our people. He also is a champion for 3 strikes you're out. That was a law back in 1994. He made that in the State of the Union just that he was going to address that, and he signed the bill of $30 billion. He had black men making prisons for other black men. Now, you have and then forthright, you also have Hillary Clinton, who was a supporter of that bill. And I correct you, she was not president, nor was she elected official at that time. I understand that. The problem I have with this is that she started ranting at many conferences and seminars, and that's also online if you go to Young Turks.
So, Shirley, let me ask you.
She calls black people super predators. So how can you support a candidate that calls you a super predator?
So, Shirley, let me ask you.
Your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, and now you're going to support this woman who don't give a darn about black people.
Okay, wait, Shirley, put a period in that sentence. So in addition to talking about blacks, he also talks about Hispanics, and he also talks about Muslims. So it's not just when they call him racist, it's not just from the things that he's saying about the African American community, but it's what he's saying about a variety of different cultures. But I wanted Kenya to say something.
You know, I have never associated myself with someone who called me the black or his black or his African American.
Well,
wait, Shirley, thank you. I have never associated with somebody like that, and I won't. Okay. I think in terms of what you're talking about, the 1994 crime bill, I think I'd offer to check your statistics a little bit, because I think that, the criminal justice policies of the Reagan era and of the Bush,
the Rockefeller drug laws.
Thank you, and of the Bush era, the war on drugs specifically, had a lot more of an impact to start the wave that was then furthered by the 1994 crime bill. I think that those pieces set the stage for the 94 crime bill to stand on those legs. So if we're going to point fingers, I would hope that you could reference those bills first.
If you go to thenation.com, you also follow, again, Michelle Alexander, the new Black Jim Crow. She also talks about that Hillary Clinton, the Clintons left the administration in 2001 in the United States and had the highest rated incarceration in the world. That means that they put more humans in jail than anyone else in the world under their administration. And here you have the percentages African American that contribute 80 to 90% of all drug offenders in the state. I mean, in the prisons at that time.
Okay,
that was under the Clinton administration. So who's to say what Hillary Clinton really has an agenda for?
Okay.
That she panders to young people like you who continue to throw numbers and who they are on the table. I've been in business for all my life. My parents have been in business for 40 years. I'm the CEO of Story.com, STORY. My children are all into tech. I have a 28-year-old, I have a 24-year-old, and I also have a 19-year-old who is in cybersecurity, and they're all into social media. Our whole family's in social media. So I'm very clear of what social media has done as far as impact for you. But if you do your homework, darling, and you just find out how she thinks of you as nothing than a less than cattle person.
And you believe Donald Trump looks at you as
Shirley,
anything other than his Negro?
Okay, Shirley, so we're about to go to commercial break, but let me ask you this. You are supporting Donald Trump. Were you supporting him from the very beginning? Was he always your candidate?
When I was on Black Hollywood Live, you can research this as well online. When I was co-host, I spoke very well of Donald Trump, and I explained why I'm supporting him, and you can research that as well.
Well, just tell us. I don't have time to research it. So tell us. I'm just asking because there were 17 different candidates. So I was just asking at the onset, have you been with Donald Trump?
I don't support the establishment on either side. I think they're all in bed together.
Okay?
I think to sit back and to lie to yourself and think that the Democratic Party is going to continue on with their rhetoric to change something that they haven't changed in the last 40 years, I think you're lying to yourself. I thought that the Republican Party has been failing in many aspects, but I still have faith in this party because I know people within this party.
Okay,
but
so
I
tell
also
us
think the
why
current
you're supporting
administration on both
Trump.
sides have a misnomer of not knowing what's going on in urban communities. Mr. Trump is a man of business and structure. He knows how to build a community, and he's been in communities nationwide. He's a $10 billion capitalist, and I think that he can teach a lot of us how we can restructure our own financial.
So why do you
wealth.
think he would be? And I'm just speaking very, specifically. Why do you think that he would be the best candidate for Black America?
I think it's the best candidate because I think that's one of the key components that we're failing in our urban communities. Look how long it's taking for Moulton Square to come together. It's just taking forever in these urban communities. Look what's going on in Detroit. Look what's going on in Chicago. In Detroit, Flint, Michigan still have no water corrected yet. Look what's going on in Detroit. The people are having mass foreclosure properties, and then they're putting people in Syrian and giving them money and vowing that people in Syrian have more value. But who's governing those communities? Black leadership. Black leadership has allowed itself to be horned in on the Democratic side
So
to
you
get
think
checked.
we need a
How
white
can
man
you
to
go
come
in? How
save
can
it?
you go into office and you
Okay,
have
Shirley,
no money, and all of a sudden you're a multi-millionaire when you come
See, this
out
is why I
your
need you to come to the
community
studio, because then I can look at you and tell you when to stop talking. Shirley, let me run my show. I can't. You're talking. So, our guests want to respond to you, but you keep talking. So, Kenya has a response. Then we're going to go to commercial break. Do you?
Sorry.
All right. So, Shirley, I'm going to give it to you when we come back. So,
I have a lot to say. I mean, I think in closing, I think that so much attention is paid to the federal presidential elections, and a lot of the issues that you're talking about, Shirley, are state issues, and they are local municipal issues. And I think that is one of the unfortunate byproducts of a misinformed Miss Shirley, I respected your time.
Okay, Shirley,
Please
I'm
respect
going to let her
mine.
finish, and I'm going to go to commercial break. So please hold your thought.
That is one of the misfortunes of a uninformed electorate, is that they blame different branches of our government for problems that are solved at different levels. We absolutely agree that the Flint water crisis needs to be addressed. We absolutely want criminal justice reform to take place. But we understand through the separation of powers how you can affect change in those areas, and I look forward to discussing that with you after the
All right,
break.
Shirley, I'm going to go to commercial break, and when I come back, I'm going to come straight to you. We are talking about the presidential election, Hillary versus Trump. We have Kenya, who is supporting Hillary, William, who is supporting Bernie, or who's supporting Bernie, and now is on the Hillary train, and we have Miss Shirley Hussar on the phone, who is supporting Donald Trump. So make sure you give us a call here. We want to hear from you. 323-473-3100. 323-473-3100. Especially if you're a Black Republican, we want to hear from you. Don't just leave.
Unicorns do exist. Please call in.
So please, all you Black Republicans, we
All
want
the
to
unicorns.
hear from you. You can't just have Shirley just out here by herself. So give us a call, 323-473-3100. We'll be right back.
Cleopatra, bomb graffiti on the tomb of Nefertiti. MCs ain't ready to take it to the Serengeti. My rhymes is heavy like the mind of Sister Betty. L Boogie spars with stars and constellations. Then came down for a little conversation. Adjacent to the king, fear no human being. Roll with cherubims to Nassau Coliseum. Now hear this mixture where hip hop meets scripture. Develop a negative into a positive picture. Now everything is everything. What is meant to be.
Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. You're tuned in to LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
Hey, shout us out. What's the count? I'm your host. I am WDC. Tune in to WDC Radio on LA Talk Live every Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for sickle cell trait awareness, lupus, bullying, mental health, and all different aspects of life. So tune in to WDC Radio right here on LA Talk Live. Also, you can listen to us on iTunes, Live 365, YouTube, and Ustream. And don't forget Apple TV and Roku right here on LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk. Shout us out. What's the count?
Interested in advertising your business, product, or service here on The Dialogue? The Dialogue will help you promote your business, increase your traffic, and bring in new clients through innovative and creative marketing packages, including affordable radio ad campaigns for small businesses. Go to www.thedialoguela.com or call 323-475-8729. That's 323-475-8729. 323-475-8729. And now, back to The Dialogue. The Dialogue with Starlett Quarles. Real talk, real people.
LOVE
108
FM.
Get down. If I could twerk, I would be twerking right now.
No,
Welcome
Starlett.
back.
We are not twerking.
I'm just kidding. I am
As
kidding.
your
I am
friend.
kidding. I am kidding. Welcome back to the Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. We are having an absolutely spirited conversation on the presidential election, launching this month's series on Let's Talk Politics with my co-host, political strategist, Miss Kenya T. Parham.
Hello.
Before we went to commercial break, we were talking about Donald Trump and leaning on Shirley Coussard to represent the Black Republican voice. But I know there are some more Black Republicans out there, and we want to hear from you. 323-473-3100. 323-473-3100. So, Shirley, let me ask you, in terms of why the majority of, one of the things that you mentioned is the entrepreneur mindset, and a lot of the Republicans are entrepreneurs. And we have a generation of young Black entrepreneurs. So why do you still believe that the majority of Black people are Democrats and not Republicans?
Why do I believe? Because I think if you look at the districts, you see the district leaders are constantly being recognized as Democrats in those communities. I mean, we have talked about local, state, and federal. And yes, we're talking about a federal position right now who's running for office. But what is the thing that's most affecting us? And it's local.
Right.
And that's what we're here talking on the show today. So I was wanting to clarify that because Kenya was talking about the different legislation in the government. Look, if you look how these communities are ran, they're ran by Democrats. They're not ran by Republicans. The despair that's going on in Detroit and Chicago and parts of New York and things that we deal with in LA, those are not ran by Republicans. And I just find an illusion that people don't do their homework and to see, if you look at the local level, what are those people really doing for us? And what does that really mean when they say one thing with their actions and what the outcome of that and the aftermath? Mm-hmm. We are constantly dealing with the aftermath.
Okay. All right.
Shirley, respectfully, I don't believe that allocating resource for our community, fighting for education for our kids, fighting for the least of these, is a partisan issue. Mm-hmm. And the majority of constituents in local municipalities would agree, because all local municipal elections, for the most part, are nonpartisan. Mm-hmm. We do not elect folks as Democrats or as Republicans, whether that's how they specifically identify. That's great.
Not true. People go on a vote. They have ballots that's given and mailed out to people's community. Are you a Democrat? Here's all the people you vote for. Are you a Republican? Here's all the people.
I'm letting you know. I'm just simply stating.
Not in every election.
Can I ask you a question, Miss Shirley? Can I ask you a question? And this is and I'm just can I just pause for a second?
Absolutely.
One of the behaviors I have found pervasive amongst Trump supporters is that they are so excited to express their opinions and views that they cannot allow other people to speak. And I just want to know, I'm experiencing it here right now with you. I know that you are really passionate about what you are talking about. So I want to give you the floor to say what it is that you need to say, because I can't even get a word out.
Well, that's the way I feel, because every time I address one question, you guys pivot to another subject matter. And I find that interesting, because you won't address what I just said to you, which was earlier, with every action is an aftermath. And you continue to pivot a different way than I would pivot. So I always wonder why people continue to talk about accolades of themselves and who they are and what they've accomplished, when people can easily Google that. When you have enough time right now, we should be addressing things regarding the people versus ourselves. So
we're talking about things. I'm pivoting in respect of Starlett and the questions that she would like to get to. I'm trying to make sure that we have time to address all of the topics that she would like to address, given some of the lengthy responses.
Ronald Reagan talking about crack. I wasn't talking about that. I couldn't get my thought across, and you cut me off. Let's pivot back to the subject matter, which is the urban communities. Republicans and Democrats will never see eye to eye, but I will tell you, over the duration of history, and you can find this any way you want and go through anyway, if it's online through books or just talking to someone who's very seasonal and very connected in those communities, they're not ran by Republicans. They're not ran by Republicans. And you continue to talk about legislation being cut, legislation here. What about individuals who are able to commute and work within themselves and making the community better? What happened to Rosewood communities? Why can't we bring those things back like we're trying to do? And I respect the fact that you guys are entrepreneurs and you are doing well, but there's many people who are not, and they don't have those assets, and they don't have that knowledge. The knowledge that is not being, really absorbed in a manner to make it work. Not that the knowledge is not there, but absorbed in a manner to make it work.
But that's not something that we rely on the federal government to provide. That's something that I think if we're talking about organizing in the community specifically, that's why we're here. And I hear that you say you're passionate about it. So we rely on people like you to host seminars and continue to educate young people, whether it's doing Saturday schools or providing financial education, a lot of which people do in our community. I think specifically when you talk about when we brought up issues, and it's interesting because you bring up people like Minister Farrakhan, who has called Donald Trump the devil, but you left that out, and I think you bring up people like Michelle Alexander, who is for certain not supporting Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
And so wait a minute,
Miss Shirley.
I'm gonna let you finish, but you're gonna have to let me get through this. So what happens is you keep using these people who are not in support of Donald Trump, who have come out publicly against Donald Trump, and if you know Minister Farrakhan, you know that he would never support, and he is all about African American and the black man and black woman supporting each other and building community and not relying on others.
And to piggyback off of my brother Will, what I will say to you also is that I think that there are many times when Republicans and Democrats do agree. I think that in our nation right now we are seeing some of it. Everybody is having to come to terms with the fact and address the systemic issue and problem with racism. In our country. I have heard Newt Gingrich come out, somebody who is a fearless leader for the Republican Party, to say, that he understands that as a white man in America, he will never understand what it's like to be a black man, and that other fellow white Americans need to take a second to understand, to hear with our folks.
And you have a person like Donald Trump who is refusing even to go speak to the NAACP convention, where presidential candidates over time have always come, whether it was George Bush who came, whether it was Mitt Romney who came, whether it was any of the previous Republican candidates. And you have a candidate that you're supporting that says, I don't have the time. It's not important enough to address this group who represents millions of black Americans.
Let me let Shirley respond. Shirley?
Well, going back to Honorable Louis Mayor Farrakhan was also on InfoWar. You guys can look that up online. Go to InfoWar and you'll see the videos where he did speak of Mr. Trump also in a positive light, that he understood the vetting of people who should be here legally and not illegally. As far as Michelle Alexander, I never stated that she was a supporter of Mr. Trump. What I said, she stated facts about the Clinton administration, how Hillary Clinton calls black people predators. You have not addressed that issue. How Hillary and Bill Clinton together combined in 2001 had incarcerated the largest mass incarceration of humans. No other country has done this. And also how can you be in prison and then you got your own brothers building another prison for you? That's unhumane. Because the Clintons' agenda from jump, now you bring them into 2016. They don't care about black people. They care about just getting elected. You guys are all excited about this woman.
But you think Donald Trump cares about black people?
I did not cut you off.
Actually, you
those
did.
who have ears, let them hear. Let the Spirit of God discern in your spirit. This woman doesn't care about black people. These people care about.
If God's discernment has led you to Donald Trump, I don't know that we're praying to the same God.
Let be fair. Let her talk.
Let her talk. You do that, you're going to pivot to something else that I said, so that you can talk about your genre, and I let you talk. Look,
you have the platform, Shirley.
I live it. I breathe it. I eat what you talk about and what your perspective and what you went to school for and how polished you are. But I come from a street perspective. I see black people hurting. I see what the gangbangers are used and treated as and just have nothing but rocks in their bags because ain't nobody from the Democrat side doing anything for them. So, yes, there's some things that Mr. Trump and Hillary Clinton we all may agree or disagree with. But I would tell you one thing. The Democratic Party is devastating to the black community. And I don't see anything changing in the future.
So, Shirley, let me ask you, how did you feel when Obama was elected the first black president?
I voted for Obama in the first election because I believe that he had hope and change. I'm not sworn to party line. I'm sworn to what I feel in my heart and my spirit to go to. And I didn't think John McCain was a great candidate for us at that time.
Okay.
As we can see through the duration of his terms of his campaign, black people aren't priority in his campaign either. What's priority is the LGBT community has been well organized and well fueled and well oiled to get a lot of their agenda on the table. And no Tino Shea, part of that is that they are organized, and I think that's where we needed to look at what they've done in that perspective. Though as a believer in Christ Jesus, I don't so much support their agenda. When we look at the illegal immigrants versus immigration, Mr. Obama was trying to promote and push the wave of the wand and making all these illegal legalized. Look, when I was a kid, you didn't have all these illegals here. You didn't go to McDonald's or Jack in the Box and everybody working there was Latino, and then people speaking to each other in Spanish. You had a perspective of black, white, Chinese, Armenian. You had an integration of all cultures. Even in the commercials, if you go back and you go on YouTube, you can see that perspective.
Okay, Kenyon, you want to say?
No, I my phone just tried.
Will, you want to say?
I mean, I think there's a number of issues that you brought up. Many, I think, are you talked about Christ Jesus. You talked about the LGBTQI community. I mean, I think we have to find a way to.
What does the I stand for?
Intersex.
Transition.
All right,
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so, I mean, I think to say that we are, the one thing I do agree with you on is that we do need to create an agenda. I think the black community needs to set priorities. I think we need to have a continued conversation and dialogue, and jobs and business and education are top priorities for me to be placed on that agenda.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's why I asked you at the beginning.
Yes.
You said we talked about. You said we need an agenda, but it's not necessarily just exclusively the Black Lives Matter.
No, I don't.
not
And
at
I don't
all.
think it
Okay.
does. I think police brutality and police reform is on that agenda. But I think.
So how do we get them to talk about other issues in the black community other than just police brutality?
Well, I think if you look at, and this is where I will tip my hat to Bernie Sanders, because I think his candidacy made Hillary Clinton a much better candidate, in large. And I think that he and Bernie Sanders supporters can really be proud of themselves to know that they are responsible for putting forward one of the most progressive platforms that the Democratic Party has ever adopted. And I think that it's much to do with many of the issues that he was championing in his campaign. And I think that, Black Americans are affected by all things that all Americans are affected by. We are concerned by the same things. However, there are certain issues that affect our communities in disproportionate amounts to the rest of America. And so when we prioritize issues that are most important to our community, I believe that is the way that we prioritize.
And I would take that a step further, even to say that we've started to influence Republican candidates, because Newt Gingrich is on. That's why Fox suspended him.
Right.
He's on the short list to be vice president. And so for him to come out and say he understands the hurt, the pain, and the anger that's happening, but can't ever truly empathize with it because he is a white man, means that he's listening to Bernie Sanders. Means that he's listening.
So Cheryl, let me ask you. The conversation now is about the VP pick. Who do you think would be a good VP for Trump, and why?
Mr. Trump is not your typical candidate. He's not a politician, so how he's going to approach this, we all really don't know. But he has surrounded himself with some of the smartest and the wealthiest and the most accomplished people to help him to identify, to associate, and connect with the issues that are currently on the platform. Look, if it wasn't for Mr. Trump, we wouldn't even be talking about illegal immigration right now.
We talk about it in
every election.
I didn't cut you off.
But you're wrong.
I didn't cut you off.
But you're wrong.
We're not dealing with the illegal immigration that has been very devastating in the urban community. Let's look at Jamil Shaw. Jamil Shaw was a young man who was just walking home from school, African-American, who was gunned down by the illegal immigrant who was there by illegal immigrant gangs that are growing in urban communities. These urban communities that had opportunity to grow together, we can't, because we see what this administration that currently is in office and has been in office for 40 years has done, has been devastating. So I think it's going to be an interesting progressive move that we'll see. It'll be someone that is validated and someone that will add value to the table.
Okay, and let me ask you guys first the same question. Who do you think would be a good VP for Hillary?
Ooh.
What about Elizabeth?
Oh my goodness, I would sell everything I own and go on the road, and that's a lot of things. A couple things I just want to respond to some points that were made. Firstly, wealth does not necessarily denote success to me, particularly in a free market capitalist society. First thing I want to say.
Okay.
Secondly, we're gearing up towards these conventions.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about, I don't think that enough dialogue is happening about the importance of a convention, the importance of people, gathering together and expressing their views like this. The people who drafted the Constitution were brilliant, albeit racist people, but they were brilliant and they were revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the Constitution. That's why we can amend things. That's why we can add caveats and asterisks into the framework. And party conventions are absolutely the revolution. They were created to shake things up. And I'm excited and looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. The Republican Party has only chosen the person who got the majority of the votes around the country in all of the caucuses 40% of the time.
Right. Okay.
And so, I'm not sure what's going to happen on the Republican side, and I'm not sure what's going to happen on the Democratic side.
Who do you think will be a good match or a good VP for Miss Hillary?
I don't know that I've settled on one person yet.
Okay.
I think,
How do you feel about Elizabeth Warren?
I love Elizabeth Warren.
Okay.
I love the things that she's saying.
Absolutely.
We talk about things like the Big Short and other movements in the financial crisis. She's been an advocate for us.
Okay.
She has been amazing and on the front line.
Okay. Right.
But I think there's still a couple others, who are out there that I would love, man, if President Obama could be the vice president.
We all would love it. Right?
I mean, Joaquin Castro, you know what I mean? I think that there is some value in adding somebody who is a little bit younger, who resonates with, the younger generation. I think we definitely need some representation from the Hispanic community.
Okay.
And I think in
How
terms
do you feel
of
about Cory
garnering.
Booker?
Oh, love Cory.
Okay.
Love him.
All right. So
Love
let me
him.
ask you, Shirley, and I'm going to ask this of all the panelists. One of the things that, is often talked about is the low voter turnout rate when it comes to Black communities, especially when it comes to local elections. So how do we continue the momentum? I mean, we may come out in large numbers for November because of all the hype with the presidential election, but how do we sustain that level of activity and not only sustain it, but increase it? So Shirley, how do we get more Black people out to vote, not only in November, but in local elections as they continue to emerge?
I think number one, we have to continue to do like shows like yourself and my Smile with Urban Game Changers, which is in 5 different states. We have leaders all around the country who are in urban communities who are talking to the people. And you can find that on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, LinkedIn, and all these other various social media platforms. Communication is key, and I think that's what we're doing now, and that's what we want to come out of it. Look, I want to go back and pivot when she talked about Donald Trump. I do mention wealth because I think that is the key component that is devastating in urban communities. And I see us not knowing how to do it for ourselves. I see how there's no opportunity of structure for that other than using governmental subsidized program. I just don't only think about Mr. Trump from a wealth perspective. I also think about it from a family perspective. He has amazing children that are self-accomplished who also, if you look at their cards and what they do in the community online, social media community. Ivanka's online. She's talking to the people. She's giving words of encouragement. But then you have the Clinton administration, on the other hand, whose daughter just purchased in the last year or two a $10 million condo. We also have Chelsea, who is part of the economic wealth, which is also part of that hedge fund.
What are you talking about?
Shirley. So what does that say?
What are we doing
here's
here?
a family that talks about community, but what they say and what they do is different.
Shirley,
And
but
they
none of
talk
the
about
Trumps
both,
are
and they
none of the
also
Trumps
raise
are
their own
Okay.
mouth. Yeah, I didn't cut you off.
Okay,
But
Shirley.
you're-
So
again,
here,
because
Taking up all the time, Shirley.
You're making
Okay.
up
Taking up all the
facts.
time.
You're
Okay.
making up facts when you say that the Trump's children are
I
self-made.
wanna
How?
finish my thought.
Trump isn't even
Trump
self-made.
isn't
His
even
father
self-
gave
$1
him
million
his home.
Okay,
seed does
all right.
not
Let
equal
her finish.
self-made
Let her
to me.
finish.
You
Go ahead,
won't let me
Shirley.
finish my thought.
Go. I'm giving you 2
I just
seconds.
want
Hurry up.
you
Come on.
to not make up facts
No,
about people.
Okay.
I'm not making up anything. You can go online. You can
But they're
research
not
online, you
self-made.
can look at the history books. So let me finish my thought. Again, when we look at wealth perspective, that's one thing. When we look at family and connecting with the community and trying to make a change in yourself, you'll see that in Ivanka Trump. I don't see that in Chelsea. I see Chelsea talk about hedge funds and her mother and her father's perspective. And if you look at their background of what one is providing for one is doing is two different thing. So
You must
What
think
I do
Rudy
know,
will-
what I
Okay,
do
Shirley,
know-
let me let Kenya respond,
What I-
and then we're going to close with the conversation on delegates.
Since we are talking about family, what I will say is, I will not look to an example of a civically engaged family, which is, I talk about civic engagement all the time. I think that one of the ways to address your first question, one of the ways to make sure that Black folks do turn out to vote is by making civic engagement a part of a lifestyle. And I'll be looking forward to continue to discuss that with you as these episodes go on throughout the month of July. But when we talk about family, how can a first family set an example of how to be involved in a democracy and civically engaged when the children aren't even registered to vote, and voter file does not even show the last time that they even participated in an election? I'll wait for your response to that.
Uh-oh.
To me, that is not an example of a civically engaged family that has been contributing to the in a participatory way to this democracy. And secondly, being self-made does not mean $1 million seed to me. That does not mean I woke up and my father gave me a small loan of $1 million and I started my company and wow, it was successful enough for me to parlay it into several other failed businesses. To me, that is not success. Success to me is what is your track record, your demonstrated track record of service in the community? Who can vouch for your presence? Not how many checks do you write starting back in 1998 to veteran organizations that don't exist. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I hear you.
I want to see a family that is ingrained in this American democracy.
Okay, Shirley.
You know what? It's interesting. Let's talk about the aftermath. I want to see a leadership that understands that we have to change what is currently working because it's not. Look, the Clinton administration is going to take us back 100 years. The Clintons are horrible people. They've done nothing for the Black community but made it blatant. If anything, they're trying to annihilate us by not only calling us predators, but having so many of our African American men who were pulled and torn away from their family for bullcrap, from a little blunt to small offenses that have made them incarcerated and still incarcerated today. We're not going to always see eye to eye on this, but I will tell you this: if you look at the history of the Clintons, their whole perspective is own self.
You're just going to avoid the
That's
question.
all. They're all about themselves. I mean, you look at the daughter. The daughter is doing hedge funds. She's not an activist in the community. She's got a hedge fund company. She's married to a very wealthy man, and their whole thing is building wealth.
Don't you respect wealth? I thought you respected wealth, Shirley. Don't you respect wealth?
The Clinton administration are horrible. They lie. She steals. There's just too much going on. You've got the email issue. You've got Benghazi. She's on a federal investigation, and she did fine. They did not find her. They did not charge her. That they did find that she did lie. So if she's going to lie on that perspective and run with an arrogant attitude, why would you vote for somebody like that? These people within the Black community, you act like they're going to change the world and they're so wonderful. No, they don't give a crap about you or your generation.
No, Shirley, I don't think that everything. I'm smart enough to know that everything doesn't fall at the feet of our president. But what I do know is that a leader like Hillary Clinton is strong enough, absolutely, to lead and to inspire our local, state, and municipal leaders to get their acts together and follow along the platform of her administration to advance progress and change. Thank you so much for our community.
Okay,
it is not all about
so let me do this, because
president.
Next week we're going to be talking about the voting process and being civically engaged and the power of being civically engaged. And before we go to commercial break, I just want to talk about delegates because Shirley, you are a delegate, and so there are some myths and some misperceptions about what it means to be a delegate. So what I want you to do, Kenya, is just explain to us what it is, are the roles and responsibilities of a delegate. And Shirley, I want you to close out telling us what you're doing as a delegate for Trump. Kenya?
Like I said earlier today, I cannot speak on behalf of the delegacy. There is some people that will come on from that. I'm sure people want to know what a delegate does and anything, they can look that up for themselves. The Clinton administration is not going to be good for Black people. We're going to have more Black people incarcerated. We're going to have more unemployed people. And you're going to see that the Latino agenda, which none of you guys are addressing, the Latino agenda is going to continue to further and expand and erode even more into our communities. And that's because of the Bill Clinton show.
Okay.
So if you want to vote for someone that's going to continue to destroy our country, then go for it. But if you want to come with someone that's going to bring a new and bright perspective from a businessman, from a perspective of really understanding what is needed to make changes, and from a business perspective and also in a heart perspective, a connection, I'm going with Mr. Trump.
Okay. And so for those of you who don't feel like looking up delegate and doing your own research, we're going to talk about it next week in depth so that we can explain what it means to be a delegate, the delegation selection process, the electoral college. So we're going to get more in depth and we're going to educate you because part of the show is to empower and to educate on various issues like politics. I want to thank all of our guests for coming on. Miss Kenya Parm, you're going to come back next week, yes?
I will absolutely be here.
Fantastic.
I'm going to come with my boxing gloves next week.
Oh, no,
Starlett,
don't do that.
with my
William
boxing
Sims,
gloves.
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
How can people find you, sweetie?
I'm at Will Sims on Instagram, William Sims on Twitter. So
Okay.
SYMS.
SYMS.
And I'm sorry, Kenyon, how can people find you?
On Twitter, I'm at KParm. That's KP as in Peter, ARHAM on Instagram.
And you're on NPR
every second Tuesday of the month. You can tune in at power88lv.com.
every second Tuesday of the month.
Yes, I
and
am.
you can also DVR her episode when she was on
BET and
BET
Centric Kirby Style with Timothy Snell.
Kirby
They
Style.
styled me for Parlay, my urban think tank on civic engagement.
Absolutely
It was such an awesome
fantastic
experience. Thank
episode.
you, Starlett. She's so supportive. Y'all.
She was absolutely wonderful. Shirley, my friend, I love you. I know you have an event coming up with Urban Game Changers. It looks like you got 2 potential guests that can come to your conference.
Yeah,
Are we
that was
invited,
wonderful.
Shirley?
You know, you guys can follow me at Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Shirley Hussar, HUSAR. You can also find me on Urban Game Changers, urbangamechangers.com. I also write a column for the Washington Times, Community Digital News. And go to shirleyhussar.com and you can see the history of who I am and what I'm about. Let's get out there. Let's continue
And
to
so,
have the dialogue
Kenya
and
wants to
find
know.
answers for our community.
Kenya wants to know if you're inviting her to your conference.
Right now, there's no set date, and we'll see.
Okay. All right. So make sure you tune in next week when we continue our conversation. Thank you so much, Shirley, for Let's Talk Politics. And we're going to talk about civic engagement and the power of our vote next week. So make sure you tune in. My good friend Kenya Parm is going to be here with me. And we don't know who else is going to show up. So hopefully we'll get another Republican who can share their perspective as well as another Bernie supporter. Thank you all so much. And this is Starlett Quarles signing off as my mama's child and my daddy's baby girl. Until next week. God bless you.
Just don't let the spin get you down. Things are moving fast. Hold on tight and you will last. Keep yourself respect your manly pride. Get yourself in gear. Keep your stride. Never mind your fears. Brighter days will soon be here. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Yeah. Keep on walking tall. Hold your head up high. Lay your dreams right up to the sky. Sing your great song. And you'll keep growing
Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. You're tuned in to LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.